Hello everyone, how you doing today? Today we're going to be talking about a security protocols and crime prevention tactics for your local synagogue, the Beth Israel Synagogue located here in Brooklyn, New York. The past few years we've seen a rise in crimes and the rise of threats against synagogues in particular, as well as other religious institutions such as churches and schools. There's been an increase in mass shootings as well as other hate crime oriented issues. This is on top of common things that we've had for years, which is vandalism, theft and burglary, assaults, and so on and so forth. I think it's important to first talk about crime, what is called crime mapping. And crime mapping is looking at an area, looking at the time of day, the area, as well as like the history of the area, how the target area looks, such as your synagogue. It's also important to look at natural surveillance and a couple other things that I'll go into more extensively as this talk and presentation goes on. In regards to your synagogue, I went out to the field and I evaluated your synagogue. I looked for holes in potential security. I looked as well as the area on a whole, the people in the area, what tends to happen in the area, when it happens, how it is at different points of the day, and so on. Your synagogue, when I went there, I noticed a couple things, and I'm going to list them now. I'm going to address the potential threat or advantage of these things, and then I'm going to suggest ways to fix it using different crime prevention tactics. The first thing I noticed when I arrived at your synagogue is there's no physical barrier around your property. You have your building, the front lawn, and that butts up with the sidewalk, meaning anyone can just walk in or out. Another issue I realized is you do not have a physical security system. You do not have camera surveillance, CCTV. These are all issues that could potentially cause issues, and these are things that, if done right, could have very high chance of preventing possible crime. Another issue I noticed is you guys do not have a cooperation agreement with your local police department. You do not have private security guards. Anyone is allowed to walk in and out of the synagogue. While it was explained to me that the congregation tends to know who belongs and who doesn't, it still wouldn't prevent someone that wants to do harm from gaining access to your facility. These are all issues that I think can be easily addressed in a couple of ways. But before I get to that, I want to talk about crime mapping and forecasting. One way that we can look at your area, in your synagogue in particular, and kind of get an idea of what crimes are likely to occur is looking at, and when they might occur, is looking at history and looking at crime data in your area. From that, we can get a sense of the typical crimes in your area. You are located in a middle class, more commercial area, not so much residential, which is a plus and a minus. On one hand, you'll have more eyes on your synagogue. You'll have more what's called natural surveillance, which is ways of making people feel watched, and like what they are doing will not go unnoticed. It is bad on the other hand because there's more people likely to come in contact with your synagogue. So based on this, there's a couple solutions I'd like to recommend that I think would go a long way in securing your facility in the long run. The first of those would be having some type of natural barrier between your property and the street. I would recommend some type of fence But fences can go either way. You don't want to make the area look criminal or dangerous. You want to implement something that will invite good, positive behavior and positive utilization of your space. There's been studies that show that rose bushes planted along a property can actually diminish rates of crime. But at the same time, that doesn't provide physical security. What I would recommend is installing gates around your facility. I would not have it be barbed wire or chain link. I'd like something nicer, like a shiny black painted metal fence. And I'm thinking about if you guys planted flower beds in front of that fence to kind of beautify the area. I think that would have a double benefit of physically putting up a barrier and protecting you from passerbys on the street. And the flowers will create this environment that's more inviting and more dissuasive of crime. With that said, I would implement a security system, CCTV and camera. I think the system should be hardwired to police, fire, emergency services in general. This will have the benefit of having early notification to the police department, so when they arrive, they have a better chance of knowing what's going on and stopping something before it happens, or at least stopping it short if it's in progress. So cameras have a double meaning as well, as well. They will provide a tool to look at the area, see what's going on, identify perpetrators, and it also serves as a deterrent. This, along with the fence and security system signage, will help deter criminals from acting in the first place. I'd also highly encourage what's called natural surveillance, and what that basically means is creating an environment where potential would-be wrongdoers feel like they can't get away with something. They feel like there's eyes on them, and it feels like they're being watched, so to speak. I would accomplish this by making sure you have big open windows on the facade, the front of your building. That way, anyone walking by or walking up to your synagogue will have this feeling that someone can see them. They can't get away with something under the cover of secrecy. At the same time, though, I would recommend that TVs or other expensive equipment should not be viewable from the street through these windows. So the windows are good as long as they're utilized properly, but at the same time, you need to ensure that they're not going to be further enticing a criminal to act, who someone walking by wouldn't have otherwise if an opportunity of this big TV in the window didn't entice them to do so. I would set up cooperation with the police, as I said, but I would also hire private security. I think having a guard at each entrance, at the very least, can minimize the issues. Because again, I feel like you have threats coming from two broad categories. It's common crime, which is arson, vandalism, theft and burglary, possibly assault. But you also have the terrorism side of it, which would be mass shooting or a bombing. Private security helps all of these help in both cases, but private security helps more on the terrorism side of things, I feel. By preventing entry to people who don't belong there in the first place. They cannot set that bomb, they cannot commit that mass shooting. And that would help if the private security firm is licensed to provide armed security. These are the big recommendations I would recommend. And we need to keep in mind again that situations are fluid, they're ever changing. I would recommend that your board sit down and decide what I've suggested should be implemented, what may not be a right fit for your congregation, as well as what other possible things you might find to be helpful that we haven't mentioned today. The key points to keep in mind is it is always good to use crime mapping to kind of get an overhead view of your neighborhood. Crime is not just happening at your synagogue, it's happening within the neighborhood around you. And if you're able to figure out times of days, patterns, types of crimes, locations of crimes in your neighborhood, you will be able to better protect yourself from crime and respond to any threats as they approach. With that said, I appreciate you taking the time to hear me, and I hope these crime control policies and tactics will serve you and allow you to better secure your facility and keep you and your congregants safe. Going forward, I believe this should be evaluated yearly to better reflect current situations.